Democrats were for tariffs before they were against them. That's like everything. They just want to be anti-Trump, anti-American. They're not born again free traders. They're born again traitors. I love this. We're going to go over this article from Daniel Greenfield. He got a wonderful article that I want to review and talk about. But before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button. Share this out so we can get this information out there. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. And hit that alarm bell so you know when I'm putting out new stuff. Also, check out my link tree in the description. It has a link to my Patreon. That's where I talk about things that I can't talk about here. There's also a link to my Instagram and my X account, so follow me there as well. All right, so let's get into this news. Now, this comes from Front Page Mag, and they report that in 1993, Democrats voted against NAFTA by 156-102, and against it in the Senate by a narrower 28-27. Which I agree. Remember when they said that huge sucking sound? They were referring to our jobs being lost, and so I actually agree with Democrats. They had it right back then in 1993 to vote against NAFTA. Now, Democrats are mourning the death of what they claim is the last vestige of NAFTA. So this is crazy, right? How things have flipped. President Trump's tariffs, they claim, are killing the free trade that Dems once opposed. But even though NAFTA was really not free trade, it was screwing the American people. Before they supported it and they opposed it. NAFTA cost Republicans the White House, but Bill Clinton's embrace of it cost Democrats the South. Clinton had manipulated and misled working class Democrats into believing that he would either reject or fundamentally transform NAFTA, and lost the white working class vote, because of course he never did. Senator Chuck Schumer, then a mere member of Congress, had originally voted against NAFTA. Schumer had it right that time. When President Trump proposed replacing NAFTA with the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, Schumer praised the move, but still, like then Senator Kamala Harris, voted against it because it didn't do enough for global warming, supposedly. Quote, "We're going to fight these tariffs tooth and nail," Senator Schumer now vows. This is the same Schumer who has spent years berating Canada for, quote, restrictive trade policies, which he was right on back then. Rep. Rosa DeLauro built her reputation on fighting NAFTA. She said, quote, "I put my heart and soul into defeating this," she recalled 6 years ago. "We were on the floor every morning, every night." President Trump trade war on Canada and Mexico, which are part of the USMCA trade agreement, driven by his 25% tariff on nearly all imports from those countries, will drive up prices on all Americans. Rep. DeLauro now argues. "I condemn President Trump launching a trade war that absolutely guarantees price increases on key products, as well as retaliatory tariffs that will affect exporters across many states." Do you not see what's going on here? Do you not see how they flip-flopped on these things just because Trump is for it now? But Democrats supported and implemented tariffs from the very beginning, from Jefferson's Embargo Act to Madison's tariffs of 1816, formed in response to British economic warfare closely resembling that of modern-day China. Not only the founding fathers and framers of the Constitution, but key figures in the Democratic Republican Party knew the value of tariffs. American independence required economic leverage. The idea that the world was one big free market with no regard to borders or national interest was fanciful nonsense that they would, for the most part, have rejected out of hand. The debate was concerned on which part of the country would benefit from tariffs and which part of the country would be harmed by them. When the Democrats internalized under Woodrow Wilson and FDR, they fully embraced free trade. The dismantling of tariffs in the 1930s became a signature part of FDR's global agenda, seizing control of tariffs, perhaps unconstitutionally, from Congress and using it as an instrument of both domestic and foreign policy is one of the unresolved crises of the New Deal. So as president to this, FDR did it for his New Deal. Um, Democrats are vocally complaining about President Trump using the power they gave FDR. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Democrats vowed free trade as an anti-capitalist program for fighting trusts and bosses by using free trade to weaken American companies. Tariffs were imposed to be an instrument of the rich, and removing them was alleged to help the poor. The package of taking down tariffs and putting up taxes was economic class warfare. At least it was until major corporations embraced it and used it to ship production overseas, because they are the main benefactors of that now, big businesses, because they can get cheap labor. They can hire some, they can ship their stuff over to China where they got child labor in other countries that have child labor and pay pennies on the dollar to get their products back and ship the products back over here. And they make massive profits for it. In reality, dismantling tariffs centralized government power, which is why the Revenue Act of 1894 under President Grover Cleveland, one of the country's worst presidents, also gave us the first non-war income tax. Dismantling tariffs required imposing taxes, which then had to be struck down by the Supreme Court and Pollock v. Farmers Loan and Trust Company. It would take an alliance of Democrats and progressives to impose taxes through the 16th Amendment. Crazy, crazy work if you think about it. We used to not have taxes. The tariffs would pay for all of that stuff. Oh, yeah, I agree. Grover Cleveland is definitely one of the worst presidents for imposing. Why was there a sudden need for an income tax amendment in 1913? You know, I talk about that all the time. The Creature from Jekyll Island, y'all need to read that book that talks about the creation of the income tax and the big banks and all of that. Later that year, Democrats passed the Tariffs Act of 1913, slashing tariffs and adding a corporate tax. Among Democrats and some Republicans, opposition to tariffs was wedded to a program of tax hikes and class warfare. Cheap foreign goods were tied to higher taxes on the rich. But despite the class warfare rhetoric, too many people in Democrat constituencies were hurt by dismantling tariffs. Democrats supported those tariffs that they believed aided the working class, as they defined it and opposed those they believed benefited American corporations. Democrat tariffs like LBJ's retaliatory chicken tax appealed to key political demographics. Bill Clinton's NAFTA double talk showed how popular tariffs still were with the Democrat base. And a generation of Democrats ran against NAFTA and denounced it as a tool of economic destruction. By the late 90s, leftists rioted in the streets of major cities against free trade. In 1999, World Trade Organization riots, I remember those, in Seattle brought together unions and Antifa for the worst non-racial rioting until the first Trump administration. The battle in Seattle was part of the larger movement of leftist economic riots and occupations culminating in Occupy Wall Street. And then that was overtaken by the corporations came in and took over Occupy Wall Street. It was a grass rooted thing at first, and then it got taken over, like everything else always does. The Democrat supporters of NAFTA and free trade learned to be careful about their views. Now, the Democrats want to act like they are the greatest supporters of free trade, this is so weird to see. And the greatest opponents of tariffs. In reality, their policy on tariffs and trade have been linked to some of the class warfare for at least the last 130 years. The opposition to President Trump's efforts to roll back tariffs worldwide rings hollow, especially since Trump's Liberation Day program is a more aggressive version of FDR's Reciprocal Tariffs Act that emphasizes the stick over the carrot. Rather than attempting to lower foreign tariffs through the mass series of reciprocal deals, Trump is trying to lower them with mass retaliatory tariffs. That may or may not work, but them should stop pretending that they're either pragmatically or ideologically opposed to them. Tariffs have been a subject of debate since America's founding. Key figures like Jefferson have held different views of them at different times. But the Democrat pretense that tariffs are a crazy policy that they always oppose is as dishonest as their previous insistence that they always oppose racism in presidential third terms when they were the prime champions of all three. It's facts. Democrats aren't born again free traders, they're born again traders. Their objective is economic sabotage above all else. Their best bet is for the House and then the White House is to take the economy, and they are guilty of everything they accuse Trump of doing. That's exactly what I think they're trying to do. They're trying to take the economy so they can blame it on Trump. The leftists are not enemies of tariffs, they're enemies of America. Well said. I love it. I agree with everything this article has to say. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this. Leave your comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe. And check out jjthepsychotherapist.com for the latest news. Until next time. Peace.